Sarah, I won't be able to date you anymore. You're a pretty girl. You'll find yourself another guy. Just don't get upset and don't cry. I can't stand it." Sarah looked at Herman and did not understand anything. Why is he saying this? What is he talking about? These 3 weeks were the happiest in Sarah's life. She was sure that Herman was just as happy with her. She dreamed that they would get married soon, and despite everyone, classmates who called her a lonely scarecrow for not dating any of the boys, despite the girls from her university who shunned her because she thought only about studying and did not understand anything about fashionable things, despite her parents who told her to be careful with men and not let them get close to her, despite everyone, she will be happy with her beloved husband, especially when they will have a baby. Sarah wanted to tell Herman about the baby, but he started it first, and now she didn't understand anything. Sarah tugged on his arm to make him stop, explained everything is fine, but the guy kept talking. "You didn't think a man like me would be single, did you? I should have realized that it was only for pleasure, for adventure. It was a fleeting weakness. I had a good time with you, and I hope you did too. By the way, the fact that you didn't have anyone before me was even funny. Okay, I'm sorry. I have to clean up here and run, meet my wife and son from vacation. Don't come here anymore. This is a friend's apartment. He's coming soon too." "Well, that's it, bye." Herman began to push Sarah out the front door, but she resisted. "Wait, I don't understand anything," she muttered. "What kind of wife? Why did you say you loved me then? I believed you. I fell in love with you." "Herman, I'm going to have a baby," Sarah shouted with a tremor in her voice already outside the door. "Yeah, that's what you all say," Herman grinned. "Do you need money?" Here, he shoved some papers into the girl's hands from behind the door. "Go ahead already." And he slammed the door. Sarah stared at some bills clutched in her hand for a long time, then disgustedly threw them on the floor of the entrance, wiped her hands on her jacket as if they were smeared with dirt, and went outside. 3 weeks of happiness, 22 days and nights of crazy love. Sarah abandoned her studies at the institute, hardly called her parents. She gave herself completely to Herman, her first man, the man she fell in love with. So much so that I forgot about everything, about my parents, about my studies, about my pride. And now she was walking through the evening city and crying. She wiped her tears, sighed, looked around hopefully for some reason, and cried again. Sarah rented a room from Ms. Jessica, an elderly cleaning lady, formerly an actress of a small theater. Ms. Jessica immediately saw that Sarah was crying. She took her into the kitchen, poured water into a crystal glass, handed it to the girl, and asked directly, "He left you?" Sarah sobbed and nodded. "Tell me." Sarah raised her head, looked at the landlady, saw sincere sympathy in her eyes, and told her everything. About how Herman dropped his wallet in the store, and Sarah picked it up and caught up with him. How he thanked her and said that there were no such honest girls in the world anymore, that she was special, besides the most beautiful. In the evening, he invited the girl to a cafe, then they walked for a long time. That evening, Herman kissed Sarah. And 2 days later he invited me to his house. He cooked a modest dinner, just boiled oysters and poured sour cream over them. It wasn't very clever, but Sarah was happy. That same evening, he said that he loved her. She believed and could not resist. And now she does not know what to do with the child. You wanted to say, "What should I do next?" No, I said it right. But it's up to you. The main thing is to make the right decision, so that you don't regret it all your life. Miss Jessica suddenly turned away abruptly and added softly, already looking out the dark window, "Not only happiness can be a mistake. It also happens the other way around. If you stop in time, I didn't stop, and now I'm all alone. On Friday evening, Sarah went home. She lived in a small village, 40 miles from the city. Her mother worked as a math teacher and her father as an electrician. They were simple, but respected people in the village. Sarah immediately called her mother to her room, gathered her courage, and told her everything. "You're only in your 3rd year." Mom gasped, "What will people say? Besides, we spent so much effort and money to get you to enroll, and now we have to give up everything because of some stupidity?" Sarah wanted to object, saying that having a child wasn't foolishness, but she remained silent. She knew how hard it was for her parents to gather money for her education. "It's good that Aunt Diana still works at the hospital, and she's on duty this weekend," Mom continued. "Tomorrow we'll go to her hospital and sort everything out. Don't be afraid. It's not scary and it doesn't hurt. Dad doesn't need to say anything. His blood pressure is already high." The next day, Sarah and her mom left the house in the morning. The bus to the city left at exactly 7 in the morning. When they were already approaching the bus stop, a sharp wind suddenly blew, a cloud flew out of nowhere, and it began to rain, a cold autumn rain that soaked all their clothes at once. Sarah froze right away, and Mom was afraid to go like that. They returned home. There was no point in going on the second flight at lunch, so the women decided to postpone the trip. Sarah did not sleep at night. She remembered Miss Jessica's words. And what if, indeed, this mistake of hers can become her most important happiness? What if she never meets a man she can love again, and then she'll be all alone, like an old actress? The next day, Sarah and her mother reached the city safely. They went into the building of the district hospital. Sarah stayed in the hallway, and Mom ran off to look for her friend. When she returned, accompanied by a short, thin woman in a white robe, she exclaimed, "Mary, your daughter is in tears. Is it possible to have an abortion in this condition? I'm sorry, I won't take it. Let's do it in 2 days, when I come on shift. Calm down, think about everything and come. Time allows," and she waved her hand and disappeared behind one of the white doors. Mom sighed heavily, handed her daughter her clean handkerchief, and headed for the exit. Sarah slowly followed her, smiling furtively into her mother's handkerchief. When they entered their yard, they immediately saw their father. He stood in the doorway with a menacing look. "Tell me, what are you hiding from me? Why does my daughter cry at night? I heard everything. Tell me the truth." "I had to tell you." After learning everything, my father tore enraged, shouted why they didn't tell me right away. "And why didn't you think that after the first abortion, Sarah might remain childless? You can graduate from the institute in absentia, and together they will cope with all the difficulties. Is it possible to take such a risk, besides killing a living being, his grandson or granddaughter?" After these words, Dad even started crying, and Sarah sobbed out loud and threw her arms around his neck. She knew that her father could be harsh, but still he was the best. When Mom called her friend and told her about their decision, she replied, "I wasn't expecting you anymore," and hung up. Sarah transferred to the correspondence department, got a job, and began to look forward to the birth of the baby with joy. A girl was born, Cindy. She looked very much like her grandfather, to his great joy. Cindy grew up to be a funny, mischievous girl, but very painful. Because of her health, Sarah had to take academic leave twice. She could not leave her sick daughter to her parents. It was difficult, but Cindy had already started the 1st grade, and Sarah, already with a diploma, got a good job in her specialty. In August, she rented a house in the city and took her daughter's documents to the nearest school. When Sarah came to the door of the school, she saw that a young man was repairing it and stopped, not knowing how to get through so as not to interfere with him. "Hold it," she heard, startled. The man handed her a pair of pliers and some kind of detail. "Just don't drop it," he added sternly, without even looking at her. Sarah was even interested. She held the parts and tools, gave them what they needed, held them when the man asked her, and he checked the lock on the repaired door, said quite, "Well, you can help normally," and finally turned to Sarah, "Oh, where's Michael?" Sarah shrugged her shoulders. "I think I'm for him." "Did you fail? Did you help me?" "I'm sorry," he was embarrassed, then suddenly smiled and tilted his head boyishly to one side. "I'm Ben, the math teacher." His smile seemed to light up his face. His eyes lit up. Sarah even stared, then caught herself and answered, "And I'm Sarah." "It's very nice to meet you," the handsome young teacher said quietly, not taking his eyes off the girl. They got married 6 months later. Ben loved Cindy very much, as she loved him. He adopted her and became a wonderful, loving father to her. It is not known why, but Sarah and Ben never had children together. But they didn't get upset. Cindy was the dearest to them both. 11 years have passed. Sarah, Ben, and Cindy went to another state to apply for university. Having settled everything, they left the institute building and were about to leave, when someone shouted Sarah from the back. She looked around and barely recognized the aged Herman. "I'll catch up with you," she said to her daughter and husband. Approaching her former lover, Sarah asked, "How are you?" Herman looked bad. It was obvious that he was abusing alcohol. "I see you that it is not very good. What do you want? I'm in a hurry," Sarah continued. "Is this my daughter?" Herman asked hoarsely. "No, of course, I was joking then. Her own dad is next to her," Sarah calmly replied to him, and the man sighed in frustration. "Why is it like this? My wife left me. It turned out that my son was not mine at all, and not a single woman that I met gave birth to a child for me. I'm sick, and there's not a single soul next to me. Why did God punish me? And you still don't understand?" Sarah asked him sadly, "I'm sorry, I have to go." She turned and walked briskly to catch up with Ben and Jessica. My daughter wanted to ask who this man was, but Sarah took her hand and offered, "And let's go visit a wonderful woman. She's an actress. I'll introduce you to her."